Oh, how we long for someone who knows and fulfills our secret desires. The joy that would be, well, we can assume that would bring, our desires are in such a way that having them fulfilled, that would bring us joy. So this would be a joy. And this has been, this idea of having our desires fulfilled, it has been at the heart of stories and fairy tales. There are these stories of adventures where someone is suddenly so lucky to be in this position that they're having their wishes fulfilled. Now, this is obviously not an everyday occurrence, so something very special has then happened in the story. The scene is different. In different stories, they might appear just like a person. It could be a beautiful fairy lady or an elderly lady, not so pretty, with a bump on her nose. Or there might even be a creature or a talking tree. All these strange phenomena seem to have in common that they want to grant the person in the story, they want to grant their wishes. And stories like this emerge from all cultures, from all around the world. So it seems to be something that we humans really like to think about this. We want to open up to this possibility that this somehow, this might come true. So what would be your wish? I know Cinderella, she got a new gown. And now I realize that for some of you, perhaps these fairy tales and movies might be totally lost on you because you don't prefer to read worldly books or even look at movies. But you see, when I was a kid, my dad had 2 jobs. He had a printing factory during daytime. So in the household, it was always full of books. And in the evening, he would go to his second job, which was to be a cinema director. So he was in charge of showing the movies. And I still am, the youngest of our 4 sisters. So when Mom wanted to clean the house in peace, my sister would go out to play, and I was sent with Dad to the movie theater. So that was my playground. I would look at the movies that Dad was showing. So I grew up surrounded with stories and books and movies. So I have wondered, what if I was in one of these stories? What if I was the person in the movie that would suddenly be in this position of having my wishes met? Well, I can always use a new dress anyway. So I was a book lover, but as I told the kids, this is my favorite book. And I read it for different reasons during the week. Sometimes I am preparing a story for the kids. Sometimes I'm preparing a sermon or a Sabbath school class. And then also I read it just for me. So recently I was somehow stuck on this verse that we read earlier. It was just stuck in my head. It would just go round and around. And I think it was the wording that got my attention, those lovely words. So I started to wonder, what does it really mean? And I sat down and I was reading it again. Do I have some desires? I wasn't really aware of any desires that were kind of still in my heart without me having done at least a part of it. What is it that only God knows? What is it in my heart that He knows, and He's the only one that is able to give it to me and willing to give it to me? So these words were, I know this is like almost, for Christians that have been in the church for a long time, this psalm is almost like an old cliche. Everyone knows it. And I thought I knew it. But since English is not my native language, and this had been going around in my head in English, my work environment is an English one. I'm doing a lot of translation at the church office where I work. So I thought, let's look at this in my language. And I did, and it just didn't really have the same effect. It wasn't as beautiful. So this delight and desire, it's just something that has this dreamy influence. It's like something to use sparingly on special occasions, special treats to enjoy. And who doesn't love to read about an lovingly almighty creator and how he really wants to give us what we want? And it would be so tempting to stop right here. And this would just be it. We would be almost like in one of those story tales, and we would just get everything that we want. That would be such good fun. Almost too good to be true. And yes, of course, sometimes life can be like a fairy tale. Everything works out and we are really enjoying. But then the story continues. And for me, I admit that it just takes watching the news to make me sad. Just to look on the internet and see all the horrible situations that are happening around the world just can really make me cry. Because that's our reality. We are surrounded by horror. We are surrounded by appalling, terrible disasters, tragedies where old people live in poverty, our youth are getting hooked on drugs, pedophiles, they roam freely, and so on. Natural disasters, madness of war, horrors of pollution, and crimes against our environment in the name of greed. We could go on and on. So the good is surrounded by evil. And the same can be said about this beautiful, hopeful verse. It shines like a jewel in the garbage, because the verses before it and after it, they set the stage where the ungodly are committing injustice, but if we read it on, we notice that they will have what is coming to them. And because my first job as a teacher was, and my education was to be an arts teacher, a textile arts teacher. So it is just within my nature to always look for patterns. And my heart was really happy when I saw that in this psalm, when I was reading it, there emerged this pattern. And the characters that are playing there's evil and there's trust and there's this joy of having your desires fulfilled. And it is not really uncommon to find this kind of poetic rhyme in the Hebrew when they were writing. It's not really the sound of the words, but it's rather the rhyme of the meaning. So meaning rhyming with meaning, putting together these patterns. So stretching this idea a little bit, so I'm asking you, to use your imagination a little bit with me here. And so if you've been relaxing and kind of zoning out, and I apologize for disturbing you, but I think it would be good for you to focus now in, because I wouldn't be, troubling you unless I would think that this might be helpful for you. This might come in handy to remember this. And you will need it. There will be times of trouble. And here it goes. So there's verse 4, it's like our verse. It's verse number 4. Take delight in the world and in the Lord, and he will give you the desires of your heart. Well, this is our joy. So, but before our verse is do not fret, because those who are evil, or be envious of those who are wrong, for like the grass they will soon wither, and like green plants they will soon die away. So that's 1 and 2. And after, if we go further down, number 10, a little while and the wicked will be no more. Though you look for them, they will not be found. So our verse is just in the middle of this. But around our verse is trust in the Lord and do good, dwell in the land and enjoy safe pasture. Commit your ways to the Lord and trust in him, and he will do this. So if we could have the picture of the verses. There we go. So if you can see, we put colors on it. So it's like the pattern. The red is the evil. The red is at the top. It's the first one that tells us that there's evil. And then number 10, it's evil again. The yellow is there. But you see, our verse, number 4, is the blue one. But around the blue one is the yellow, and that is the trust. So that the evil things, the red ones that are really, they are in the world. There's nothing we could do about it. It's there. It's going to be there. While we're in the world, there's evil in the world until, So there is the red and there's the blue verse. We want to be in the blue. It's the center. That's where we want to be, having our desires met. But around it, you're not going to get, the evil is not going to get to the blue one because the yellow is protecting it. It is around it. So you see the pattern there. So for those of us who are visual, we like to see things in color and in patterns. So another picture, if we could get the one with the, because some of us also are perhaps food lovers of also not just texture but taste. So I'll put this picture for you because this can also be helpful to remember it. So the nice, good verse number 4 is the nice marzipan in the middle, but around it is layers of chocolate, and that is the trust. You're not going to get to the marzipan because there's the trust. It's like in layers. And even, you see, if you don't believe me, I have some. So if you're a person that is not going to believe this just because you read it in the Bible, and you're not going to believe it just because you see the pattern, if you need to taste it, then this is a good way. I'm sure it can be done with fruits and vegetables. Yeah. So this is here. So this was helpful for me, so perhaps some of you as well. So there's this safety zone of trust. And obviously this trust must be built on this closeness that we have with the Creator. And not necessarily easy to trust and to give our way. How might that look in your life? What are you dealing with that where you have to trust God, whether it looks like a good idea or not, whether it looks like it's comfortable or not. The only way for you is to trust him and in the middle of the circumstances. And that means you're going to have to listen, you're going to have to study, you're going to have to pray, let him take charge, and then obey, which is not always the easiest part. So could we have the next slide, please, with the A and a B? Yeah, so this is what we need to do. This is what this verse is, this psalm is telling us. It's kind of giving us how we can achieve this. So you need to do good. And we could say that's not too complicated. I mean, we all kind of feel like decent kind of, at least average, decent kind of persons. We don't want any harm to others. And there's this element of action, though, that needs to take place. You need to do good. And it doesn't specify what it is. You are trusted to know what is good. And it doesn't tell us how much. So you can't really go and say, okay, that's it, I've done my part. No. So you have to be continuing to do good all the time. Then you are on your way to your own joy if you're doing this. So seek constantly ways to do good unto others. The more the better, and that by you are increasing your chances of your own happiness. And then it's the other part, commit your ways to the Lord. Trust Him and He will do this. So we don't get any details with that one. We have to figure it out. That's why we can study. That's why we can come to church. We can have groups. We can do whatever it takes to figure this one out. Commit your way. And you want to figure both A and B out because you want to be in verse 4. This reminds me a bit of the part in the Lord's Prayer where it says, thy will be done. That's kind of number B for me. So to sum it up, there are many bad things around us, but what is our role? Our role is to trust, to do good, and then be glad, because justice will be done. It is all under God's control. We can actually read in this psalm in 5 places where it promises that the ones who are patient, they will in the end be victorious. It's in verse 9, 11, 22, and 34. It's repeated again and again that just don't give up. Keep on trusting. It will all, end in the way that God has promised. It is, though, natural for us to be outraged by what we see around us. We get angry. We get filled with despair when we see the unjust keep on around us, damaging and hurting. But it's not over yet. The final outcome is on its way. And if you have not read up on it recently or ever, then I suggest that you make your way over to the website of our church, or the World Church, where you can find a link under Belief, and there you can find the biblical message of the restoration. It's a very handy tool because there, especially if you have like friends or relatives asking you, what do you mean about, the end? What is it going to have? What kind of a different story ending do you see in the Bible than the world is talking about? Well, it's under this link where it's really easy to see those verses about Jesus' return and the end of all evil, and then what is ahead, the new earth and new heaven. So let's just not forget where we are in the plot of the story. If we were in the old type fairy tale or folk story, we might have gotten 3 wishes. We would have messed up with the first 2 ones, because that's what usually happens, and we would have to use the last wish to make it all right again, because that is the story that is almost like all stories. That is like the humankind has this one story of things starting out nice, and then it gets messed up, and then the last minute it's all sorted again. So, but since we're not in the Brother Grimm's tale or a Disney adventure, we are here in this place that we call reality, and where we see horrible and intolerable circumstances around us, and we would just like to see justice, and we would like to see it now, right now. We would rather have the joy than the pain. That's nothing to be ashamed about. It's our natural reaction. But, well, we have now this walkthrough from the Creator himself, if I can borrow this vocabulary, from someone that has found online a guide that gives them the way to go straight through the computer game to straight to where the treasure is. So we have this walkthrough. If we trust the one who made the rules, then we can get to the core. We can get to the sweet marzipan. If we just use our everyday trust, then we can get to this celestial joy that is waiting for us there. Amen.